You won't believe what happened when a raging HOA Karen stormed into my private lake cabin, only to discover I wasn't alone, because sitting across from me was none other than the state attorney general. Make sure you stick with me to the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable real-life encounters like this one. It all began on a bright Saturday morning when I finally decided to escape the noise of the city and retreat to my lake cabin, the one piece of property my grandfather left me that had no ties to the suffocating reach of the homeowners association that ruled my suburban neighborhood like a dictatorship. And yet somehow, despite it being miles away, despite the HOA having no jurisdiction over my cabin whatsoever, Karen, the self-appointed queen of complaints and enforcer of every made-up regulation she could invent, had tracked me down, though I didn't know it yet, and while I was busy brewing coffee in the cabin's small but cozy kitchen, waiting for a very important guest, the crack of gravel outside signaled the arrival of someone who wasn't on the guest list, but I didn't have time to check, because my phone buzzed with a text. Here. That one word came from the state attorney general, who had agreed to meet me privately in this cabin to discuss a troubling matter that could blow the lid off the HOA's corruption, a story too big to tell anyone else. And as I opened the door, in walked a tall, sharply dressed figure with an air of authority that made the humble wood-paneled walls feel like a courtroom, and we sat down across from each other at the rustic oak table, the attorney general lowering their voice to explain how multiple complaints had been filed against Karen and her cronies, alleging harassment, extortion, and even misuse of HOA funds. But suddenly, before we could go deeper, the front door slammed open so hard it rattled the frame, and there she was, Karen in all her glory, clutching the clipboard like it was a royal scepter, her eyes darting around the cabin before locking on me with the kind of glare that could curdle fresh milk, and she barked, "You can't just build whatever you want without HOA approval." Even though this was my private property, outside any HOA jurisdiction, and I replied, calm but firm, "Karen, this cabin isn't under the HOA, you have no authority here," but she puffed herself up, jabbed her finger at the attorney general without recognizing them, and shrieked, "And who is this? Unauthorized guest, against regulation," which almost made me laugh, except the attorney general leaned back, steepling their fingers with a look of amused disbelief, and said evenly, "Ma'am, do you know who you're speaking to?" But of course Karen didn't, because Karen never listens, she only lectures, and she launched into a tirade about how my deck furniture wasn't community approved, how my firewood was stacked at an unsafe angle, how my curtains were the wrong shade of beige, even though none of this had anything to do with her. And as she ranted, spit flying, her voice echoing off the log walls, the attorney general quietly pulled out a leather folder and began taking notes, occasionally glancing up with an expression that suggested this spectacle was worth more than any testimony. And I realized then that this intrusion, as maddening as it was, might actually be the perfect evidence of harassment. But things took a twist when Karen's phone buzzed, and she turned pale, muttering something about board business, before recovering and barking louder, accusing me of hosting secret illegal meetings, in violation of bylaws that didn't apply. And then the attorney general set their pen down and said in a firm voice, "Ma'am, I am the state attorney general, and I'm here conducting an official inquiry into HOA misconduct. Your behavior right now is being documented." And for the first time in my life I saw Karen's confidence waver, her jaw slack, her eyes blinking like someone had just pulled the rug out from under her throne. But instead of backing down gracefully, she doubled down, insisting this was some kind of sting set up by me, that I had lured her here, that the government had no right to question her authority, which was ironic, because of course she had none. And the attorney general raised an eyebrow, asking her calmly if she was in possession of HOA funds, if she had been issuing fines without board votes, if she had ever threatened homeowners with foreclosure for personal grudges. And each question seemed to make her twitchier, sweat beading on her forehead as she clutched her clipboard like a lifeline. And then came another knock at the door. 3 sharp raps, and when I opened it, 2 investigators stepped in, flashing badges, their presence filling the room with an energy that made Karen visibly shrink, though she tried to keep her composure, sputtering about illegal entry and private property rights, which was ironic given she had just busted into my cabin uninvited. And I almost laughed, but the situation was too tense, because one of the investigators laid a file on the table, thick with documents, evidence of financial mismanagement, threatening letters signed by Karen, and even photographs of her storming onto other people's property in broad daylight. and as the Attorney General flipped through the file, they asked me to recount everything Karen had just done here today, so I spoke clearly, detailing the intrusion, the shouting, the accusations, all while Karen tried to talk over me until one investigator finally said, "Ma'am, silence until your turn," and her face went crimson, like a child scolded in class. But then another twist came when Karen's phone buzzed again, and this time, the screen lit up with a name everyone in the room recognized, the HOA president, a man already under investigation for embezzlement, and the Attorney General gestured for her to answer on speaker, and what spilled out of that call shocked even me, because the president's voice boomed through the cabin, furious that Karen had barged into my cabin, warning her that she was blowing everything, and that the Attorney General can't know about the transfers, which of course they already did, and when Karen realized what had just happened, her hand trembled so badly she dropped the phone, the investigators seizing it instantly, and the Attorney General leaned forward with a cold smile, saying, "Thank you for your cooperation, ma'am. You've just confirmed everything we needed." Karen, cornered, tried to storm out, but the investigators blocked the door, informing her she was now part of a criminal inquiry, and her shrieks of protest echoed across the lake as she was escorted out, her clipboard finally slipping from her hands, scattering papers across the wooden floor, and as silence settled, the Attorney General turned to me, thanking me for my patience, for documenting every incident, and assuring me that the HOA's reign of terror was coming to an end. But even then, deep in the pit of my stomach, I knew this was only the beginning, because corrupt power rarely surrenders quietly, and while Karen had been busted spectacularly, the bigger fight was still ahead, and I vowed right there in that cabin, over the fading echoes of her tantrum, that I would see it through to the end, not just for me, but for every homeowner who had suffered under the tyranny of an HOA gone rogue.